15 seconds.
It is August the 2nd, 1984. We are in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and we are talking to Mrs. Pearl Lang. Mrs. Lang, could you tell us where and when you were born?
I was born in Lodz, Poland. The date is April the 10th, 1923, and my maiden name is Wiesenfeld.
In order to understand the immensity of the crime that befell the Jewish people all over Europe during the Second World War years, we would like to find out a little bit about the pre-war years, your childhood, your family. Could you please tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, I came from a family of 6. We were 4 girls and 2 boys. My immediate family was my father and mother, and I had 1 grandma. And my father's name was Abraham Wiesenfeld, and my mother's name was Leah. My oldest sister was Hela, Israel, Chaim, and then I came, and then it was my 2 little sisters. One was Rohala, and one was Esther. The ages, my older sister was 20, then I had a brother from 18, and then I was 16 when the war came. I had a brother 14, and my little sister was 10, and my baby sister was 8. We lived in Poland, and my father had a little factory, a little weaving factory, fontaine machines. We lived comfortable. After the school, it was almost run by the family. After the school, we would come home and run work. But we had a very loving home. The whole life for my father and mother was surrounded about the children. I come from a very Orthodox home, very believing in God and in the Bible. We were taught from little children that whatever we get in life, God gives us to share it with others. And we were all school children yet. My brothers went to a religious school, a yeshiva, and really I could recall those beautiful holidays, what we had together, the white tablecloths and the candles and the prayers. And we may have not have too much material things, because Poland was a country where we didn't have too much. If you could have support your family and feed them and buy them some shoes, this was a lot. But we had a lot of other things where I miss it now very much. My parents, when the war came out, they were both 42 years old. And when I look back now, in those times when I was 16, I always thought of my parents that they are elderly people. But now, if I passed already this age, I see how young they were. And when the war came and the Germans came in to Lodz, we were 200,000 Jewish people in Lodz, and 200,000 Poles, and 200,000 of German people who lived in Poland.
In Lodz.
In Lodz. lived in the city of Lodz. I was old enough to understand that something is happening, because the day the Germans came in, they marched in, the soldiers so sure of themselves, and the streets were crowded with people who were Germans, but we didn't know, were throwing flowers, and they were yelling, "We waited for this day so long and so long." And it was a rough life. Right away, we were not allowed to go to school. The education was taken away. And I could have stayed in the line a whole night to bring a loaf of bread. And before I was already close to this, to get my loaf of bread, and I wore a little shawl, and they shouldn't recognize me that I'm Jewish. And when I got to the window, the man who all my life I used to go buy bread from him said to me, "Your money isn't good. Get out of here." And I came home after I stayed so many hours, and I cried that I was so happy that I'm going to come home with a loaf of bread. But this didn't happen. A short while afterwards, there used to come, and with the Germans formed like a group of Jewish people, policemen who helped them. Like they came every day, and they took a group of girls on a truck. They took us to work. What was our work? When they came in, they threw out the Jewish people from their apartments, and they took the apartments for the Germans. Then every day they would pick us up, a whole group, and they would take us to work, and we were brought back. And this was going on for a few weeks, till one day my mother was talking to this Juden, I forgot how you call it. Judenrat guy. And she went down with me, and she cried, and she put her head on me, and she gave me a kiss, and her tears were just coming down her cheeks. And I was annoyed with her, thinking, all the other people will see that, she treats me like a baby. And I kept on saying to her, "Mother, but tonight I'm going to come back." And little did I know that this was the last time I saw my mother and my whole family. Till today, if I think of this last kiss and her tears, it just like it would happen today. And this was in 1939. I didn't come back. We were taking the whole group to a prison and threw in with all hard criminals, prostitutes, murderers. And there we were children who never slept in anybody's house, very much protected. We end up being in a prison with us, and they were using awful words, and they took away everything from us, even my hairpin, even everything what we had. And our work was there. They were bringing in big sacks of feathers, and we were separating them, the feathers, and then they were making pillows or whatever. And after a few weeks, they took us to a concentration camp, Majdanek. And this concentration camp wasn't yet built. It was the beginning. The ground was still a lot of mud, and when it was raining, you couldn't even walk. And our work was, we got big stones and a hammer, and we used to have to make little pebbles and spread them on the roads. And every night, I will never forget when we came the first time to Majdanek. And there wasn't any barracks built, but there was one big room, and we were asked to undress. and put our clothes very neat, folded and aside. And we thought maybe we will get this clothes back. And afterwards, we were naked. And we had to go around and around and around and around. And there was an assessment and white gloves. And a wave of his hand meant death or life. In the beginning, we really didn't know which one is for life and which one is for death. But we find it out very fast that the people who came in with family or elderly people or children were always grouped in one. And they were taken away, and we never saw them again. And in the beginning, the crematoriums weren't yet working. Then we didn't see any chimneys burning or smell burning flesh or things like that. Then we really didn't know what's happening. And every day, we didn't have where to sleep, but at night we would just lean on one another against the wall. Whoever came early and got a spot against the wall was good. But we never got our clothes back, and when I got the striped big dress, and nothing, just a dress and a pair of wooden shoes, and I put this dress over my head, and I felt so dehumanized. I felt like I exist to being human. And like the dress would smell with that. I just can't describe the feeling of it. But right away, I put my thoughts together and I said, well, I left home my parents and my family, and I survived to see him. And I'm not going to let myself. Doesn't matter what. I have to survive. And it was going on for weeks and weeks, and every day was the selection. And after a while, we saw at night those chimneys burning and coming out like black smoke, and the smoke was smelling. And I worked there for a few weeks on the fields where we planted beets, sugar beets. And as we planted, we found bones and ashes. And it didn't take too long to figure it out that the people who are taken away and we never see them again, those are the ashes of the people. It was in Majdanek,
yes.
I wasn't too long there. And I was taken to, again, in big military trucks, and we were closed up and we were driven to a concentration camp, Flugplatz. And this wasn't far from Lublin, the biggest city.
In that area.
In that area,
yes.
And not too far from Majdanek, too. I don't remember exactly how long we traveled.
And how did you travel from Majdanek to Flugplatz? By trucks.
By trucks.
And how many people approximately?
Oh, in this group where we traveled, probably a few hundred.
I see.
Just picked a few hundred. When the roll call, we had to get up 4 o'clock or 4:30 to stay there for a few hours. And the end of the roll call, they were counted up 100, 200, 300, and taken away. Then we were taken to this camp, Flugplatz, and there we met thousands and thousands of Jewish women who were there already. And every day, they were built a train who came into the concentration camp, and the wagons were loaded with clothes, with shoes. A wagon one day arrived, 10 or 15 wagons just with shoes, neatly tied in pairs. And in the other wagon came a wagon with blankets, or a wagon with clothes. And our job was to unload those wagons and put it like in a shed. And in those sheds, there were long tables where other people was sorting the clothes. Our job where I worked, this commando, was a very hard job because it was outside and it was in the winter and it was cold. And when you're hungry, and it happens a lot of things to me there, that one day I was marched to work in a group to our commando. Usually the same woman worked this kind of work. And I saw a Pole who I knew, a Polish, a young fella who I knew before the war. And he said to me, "Oh, my God, you are here tomorrow, and I'm going to come." They were allowed to come in and do their work and leave the evening. He said, "Tomorrow, when I come in Polish," he said, "I'm going to leave you a piece of bread in this pile near the lantern, you know, where this meant a bathroom, really."
Yes.
And he says, I see if I could. And I was so happy. My God, I'm going to have another piece of bread. It meant life. And sure enough, the next day, I watched him and I tried to maneuver around. I should see him coming in. And I saw him going to this pile. And just before, when I picked up a bundle, it fell out from this bundle, a little handkerchief made in a knot. And there, I didn't know what it is, and I didn't have time to look for it. And I figured, well, he was so nice, and to risk his life, I'm going to leave him that. Whatever it is, if it's a watch, they could use it or so. And I made my way to this pile of sand, and I didn't know that on a roof there were assessmen watching what the people are doing. And I heard that loud speaker screaming, "Halt!" And I didn't listen to it, and I was running, and I figured a few thousand women, I mix up with them, and you know, I get away with it.
Halt meant what? Halt.
Halt meant stay.
Stay.
Yeah, just don't move.
I see.
And sure enough, he did get me. He was running, and he found me. He took me out, and he brought me into an office where there was sitting a SS Führer, a woman, and he said to her, she was shachering with the Poles. It means I did business with the Poles.
I see.
And he left me there. He just brought me in, that he got me. And she was sitting down there, and she says to me, "Tomorrow you're going to be hanged. Tonight you're going to be put in a," I forgot the name, how we call this little place, where you stand up a whole night. And tomorrow morning, when we have the countdown, you're going to be hanged. And I knew that I will be hanged. And she said to me, "Do you have some, what did you want to give the Pole?" I said, "You know, when I picked up a bundle, this what fell out, and I put it in my stockings, and I didn't want to give it to him, but I went to pick up this piece of bread." She opened it, and she spread it on the desk, and there were diamonds and diamond watches, and I saw that she's getting cuckoo just looking over it. She's getting crazy. And she says to me, "Well, this what happened, and you know, you shached with the Poles." And I said to her, "Just one thing before I die, I'm going to tell what you took from me."
Were the Germans not allowed to keep any of the possessions for themselves?
No, it had to be when we opened the packages, and we were told if we find money or gold, it went in a big coffer, in a big valise.
I see.
And this went, I don't know where it went, but they were not allowed to take it for themselves. And she wanted it so badly to have those things. She probably never saw it in her life. And sure enough, they put me in this little, was maybe, I don't know, a foot around the thing. And I was there, and I knew that it's the end, I have to die. And what it kept me the whole night through, I couldn't close my eyes because you couldn't sit down. I thought of those beautiful years where I had home with my family and my brothers and sisters, and how caring and how lovely everything was. But when daybreak came, I saw the sun coming in or so, and I thought, I'm doomed to death. Now the daybreak is coming, and this is it. And when I heard steps, the couple came in, and she was a couple over all the women in the concentration camp.
Maybe we should clarify the name couple. Did it mean?
Yeah, she was a woman, a Jewish woman, who the Germans wanted to make their job easier. Then they probably thought they're going to get a Jewish girl, and we will trust her, and she will be able to maneuver and bring him the things, and they don't have to do the dirty job, but those Jewish girls have to do. And maybe to hurt him too, because when this girl came in, she said to me, I was told that I have to give you 25 lashes. She says, but why should I hate you? You wanted a piece of bread. She says, that's mine. I can't do it, she says, but I have to. You scream as loud as you could. And maybe, this Lagerführer will decide that maybe you get something less. And I was thankful that my life was spared. And I just going to get the lashes. And I was asked to pick up my dress and lay down flat on 2 chairs. And she was hitting, and she was counting, and I couldn't bring out a scream out of my body, because after a while, your body gets so numb that you can't feel any pain. And this Lagerführer said to her, she's so brave and she's not yelling. She has enough. And I think I had 15 or 16 lashes.
Lagerführer being the chief of the camp?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, this was the lady who took the jewelry from me.
See.
She was the lady who took, she was not yet the main, but she was some rank she had where we didn't, we weren't introduced to them to know what kind of ranks there are. But she had a lot to say in it. And I felt, I was spared again with my life, and hoping, always hoping that I want to live, and I will live. I will live maybe to tell. And I hope that somebody of my family will live through too. And I think that this concentration camp, I was the longest, and I had the most beating I got there. Then the next time, passed a few weeks, and we worked very hard, and I got sick, I got typhus. And the girls, one friend of mine changed with me. She used to work to sort the clothes. She said, I'm going to go out to work outside, and you come in dirty clothes. Then in the morning when I came in, I was burning with fever. They would put some coats on the floor because the floor were made of stone. And they covered me up with a lot of clothes. And I was laying there till we went home, and they were literally carrying me by my hands. And without any help, without any water to drink, somehow I survived. I was young, I was strong, and my will to life was very strong. And I believed in God. Then it happened one day. It was on a Sunday, and it used to be that Sunday was the day of rest. And we went out to the appel, to the roll call, and we stayed for hours. And then one assessment came, and he said he needs 10 girls to unload a wagon with shoes. And it was cold, and I figured, well, if I work, I warm up. And I volunteered. And 2 girls, we had those barley sacks. 2 girls loading a sack of shoes, and we carried both to a shed. And we took out the shoes, and we went back, and we took another one. It was already towards the end, and it started to be dark. This assessment, his name was Winkler, and he was very well known that he killed a few girls. He was, just maybe 2 weeks ago, he had killed a girl who I knew very well. She was from Warsaw, and she slept not far from me. He called me and he says, "You committed sabotage. You took a sack of shoes and you threw it in the lantern. Our lantern were built like in a round. And in one time, they could have go in 100 people. You know, there was board, was a round thing built like a circle, and there was a board around."
Yes.
And he says, "You know, for committing sabotage, you have to die." And when I start to say to him, "I didn't do it," he says, "You are a Jew, and Jews don't have any voice." He took me into the same shed. He let the other girls go. He took me into the self-shed where we unload those shoes. He says, "Lift up your coat." And he started to beat me. I looked at him in the beginning. I could have seen him. And around his mouth there was how would you say, a shaum?
Yeah, foam.
Like a foam.
Yes.
All around his mouth, and he was like a wild man. And he beat me, and I was unconscious. I didn't know the end, what's happened. But in a few hours, I came to myself, and I tried to move my body. Still have unconscious, not remembering what had happened. I wanted till I came to myself. I felt that I can't move. Then I slid out, and in front of this bar, of this shed, there was a lot of snow and ice. And I lay down there, and I was laying for quite a while, where I always say that this snow and ice saved my life, because after being a few hours on it, I was able to wiggle, and on all my fours, I don't know how many hours it took me, I crawled in the barrack. And when the girls who knew me saw me coming in, the screams and the love and the laughter and the joy in a time like that, they thought for sure that he killed me. And there I felt I was still spared with my life. In the same concentration camp, I unloaded once a wagon, and I pulled out a feather blanket, and there it fell out a human head, a man's human head. And I start to yell, and that's all what I heard is wild, wild laughter. It was so hard to live, but somehow we didn't look ahead of us. That's the only way we were able to live, is from hour to hour. In this concentration camp, when it came night, we had a big barrack because there were 5 bunks. At the end of the barracks, there were big wooden buckets, and at night when we need to go, you had to go to those buckets. And there were a group of people, what they called them the Scheisse Commando, and they used to get maybe additional little piece of bread. And when the buckets were already full and finally you crawled down and you had the diarrhea and you burned out with fever and you wanted to go, they didn't let you. They hit you because the buckets were full. And it may be, I don't know, I remember times where I thought it's the worst thing in life what could happen if you need to go and you don't have where. In the mornings, sometimes I got up and I saw people who, this camp was surrounded with electric wires, and I saw girls laying near on the floor near the wires, and I envied them. I thought, my God, they're not going to be beaten anymore, and it's no then peace. And I wanted so badly to do that, but somehow I think our bringing up, I believed that God gives life, and He's the only one who has a right to take it away.
I see.
Would take long time to tell all the awful things. In this concentration camp, there was a lot of hanging. Where every day almost we came home and there was 2 girls hang, 3 girls hang, and they had just like narrow gallows between the barracks, and we would tell that's the roll call and we have to look straight, and they put this rope around their neck and they would say to them, you could have a wish. Then I remember a girl who was hanged said she wanted bread to die, not being hungry. Really, this was my longest time I spent in Flugplatz.
In Flugplatz. And from Flugplatz, you were taken where?
One night, I came home and went early to bed, earlier than somebody else. And as I fell asleep, I dreamt that I saw my father in my sleep, and he said to me, listen, you run away from here for any cost. You run away. I was in sweat, but when I got up, when we were called for the roll call, I said, all right, my father said, you run away. And I remembered, the girls who were with me, we slept in one bunk, 6 of us, when we had to turn, everybody had to turn, when one had to turn. And when we stayed at the roll call, and just this next day, they came to take some people to Majdanek, because this was the only crematoriums in this area. And when they said they need 40 girls, I stepped out. And this black couple came over to me, and in Polish she said to me, "You know where those girls are going. What you doing? Get in." And she, in front of the assessment, to make, make it nice, she hit me. She said in Polish I should go in back in the line. But somehow, like something would push me, and I didn't. And we were counted 40 girls more and put in a truck, and we stayed near the entrance, and a whole day we weren't fed, and we didn't have anything to drink. And the girls marched down towards the evening, and they pitied us, and they knew that this is probably we're not going to be alive the same evening. But the way it turned out, that we were sure that we are taking to Majdanek. And we passed by Majdanek, and I come from a religious home, and I knew my prayers. And I guess like any other religion, we have a prayer before that. We call it a vida, the vida. And I leaded the group, and we all sat, and we huddled to each other, and we passed by Majdanek. Maybe not so happy. We thought, well, now even the gas is too much for us. They will take us someplace in the woods, and we will be killed. But as the luck was with us, they took us, the 40 girls, to a marmalade factory in Milejev, a small town where we used to, the people from this little town worked there. And it was very good for us because we got an apple and we got a carrot. And the people from town were very nice to us. They brought us, if they could smuggle in, they brought us things that we were able to eat, or a kerchief for us.
Okay. So from the terrible experiences of Flugplatz, you were taken to the marmalade factory in Milejev, where you stayed for a few weeks and where life was a little easier for you.
And we thought that maybe we could stay there to the end and have a easier life. But on September the 19th, 1943, the girls from the village came in and said, from the concentration camp where you come, from Flugplatz, all the Jews got killed, and so is von Travniki. And we were worried, and we thought, well, maybe we were forgotten and they will let us go. But the same day, a truck just rolled in, and they took us away to a concentration camp, Travniki. It was a few thousand Jews there, from Warsaw the most, men and women together. They were brought in. And when we arrived on the way where we were sitting in this truck, and we thought, well, it was good that we lived so long, but now the time came, they weren't spared, and why would we? Then the whole way, and I was sitting right in the edge, and I asked this, he was a Ukraine, they cooperated with the Germans, and he was a Ukraine guy, and he was wearing, how did we know? Because they were wearing black uniforms, and the Germans had a green one. And I asked him in Polish, I said, what time is it? And he said to me, it's 4 o'clock, but for you it's 5 of 12. Give us everything what you have, because when you arrive in Travniki, There stays a man with a machine gun, and they will kill you right away. And there were 10,000 Jews killed yesterday. Well, we thought that he's lying. We wanted to believe that he's lying, that this is not true. But sure enough, as we arrived closely, we smelled the burned flesh, and as they came into the camp with a truck, they were laying dead bodies, arms, heads separate. We were taken into a barrack where there was 120 men, and they told us what's happened. That 2 days before, they dug ditches, long one, and just a day before, there came SS people, and they were asked to undress, and they shot them right in the ditches. And those men were left there to take out the bodies and to burn on a big how would you say,
Bonfire?
Bonfire, like that. And the man came home, they said a prayer of the dead because they recognized their mothers or fathers or loved ones, somebody from the family. And took maybe a week. Our job was we went to the fire, and people who they were hidden, and they brought them to the fire. They had to undress, and we took away the clothes from the fire. After a few weeks, when the bodies were burned, one evening they came in, and they said that they're taking away the men, 120 men, and they're going to be shot. And when they were taking out, we all cried, and we were very. And he says, "Don't cry and don't scream. We will be for you right back." And I could remember like it would happen today. I undressed and I put in a big coat, and I thought to myself, when I get to the fire, I don't want to be bitten by the dogs, because they were staying there with dogs if somebody didn't undress fast, to be ready. But as it happened, this assessment came back and he said, they still need us to sort the clothes from the barracks, from the dead people. And one day, as I pulled out a blanket from under the bridge, maybe my own thought, if you say that 2 million children were killed, it's just 2 and a lot of zeros. But this is a story about a bright little boy who once lived free in Warsaw with his parents. And the story what happens to him. Then as I pulled out, I heard a stir. And I thought maybe a rat or something. And to my astonishment, I saw a little child there, all cribbles, just laying around, and I picked him up, and his head fell to a side. And he couldn't, his face was shriveled, weak, and even the ruthless assessment looked at this child, and I said to him, please, could I take him to the barracks? And maybe he had children home or so. He says, well, as long as you live, you could have him. And I begged him he should take me to the barracks, because on the way, if somebody from the other SS would see me carrying a child, I would be killed, because around the camp there were those, where they sat on top.
Yeah, watchmen.
Watchmen,
yes.
Too. And he agreed with it. He walked me to the barrack, and this little boy he slept with me. He was a sick child, and took weeks till he was able to converse, and he told me that his name is Mareczek Semel. He lived in Warsaw. He arrived here with his father. His mother was killed in front of him. They came to the house, and his father was at work, and his mother hid him under a mattress. And when they got into the house, they shot her. And he was a long time, he says, with his mother while his mother was dead. He crawled out and under the mattress, and he was with her till his father came back. The little boy, he said he was 5 years old. But children in the war, their mentality was like a child from 10 or 11. And with very little help, we didn't, we were 40 of us there, very little help what we had with medication. Finally, he started to trust me, and he was beautiful. He was a blonde little boy with big blue eyes who they spoke. You could have read his mind when you looked at him. And day after day, we took those barracks apart, and it meant life. If one barrack was taken apart, we said to each other, this is life. This is a day of life. And if we had to go to the bathroom, we had to go 10 of us in one time, because the assessment went with us, and he stayed outside, and we had all to come together back. And we were watched. There were always somebody in front of this barrack. And finally, when I came home, this little boy was staying there and greeting me with kisses and hugs. And I had somebody to live for. I dreamt, I planned that someday, if I'm going to be free, this child, if he doesn't find anybody, he's going to be mine. And this was on April the 10th, and the girls planned a little celebration for me. They took the portion of bread what they got, and they took the little marmalade, and just a birthday. But it wasn't too long till the assessment. We heard coming somebody, and our capo said to us, Mareczek is taking away. I didn't know what to do. I went so much through in my life, but I didn't think I would survive this one. And the little boy looked at me and said, Perelka, that's my Polish name. He said, where do they take me? And what are they going to do to me? And I quick said to him, they're going to take you to a school, and you're going to learn how to write and read. And he looked up with his bright blue eyes, and he said to me, if I'm going to learn how to write and read, my first word, it will be Perelka. They took him away from the same day, and I knew that he's not going to be alive the same day. They took him to Majdanek back. And when the soldier came back, I asked him, I said, I give you anything, just tell me, where did you take this child? And he told us that he took it to Majdanek, to the crematorium. At the time,